When Michael saw his wife Lisa with another man at the restaurant he had booked for their anniversary, his world fell apart. But instead of tears, he chose cold, calculated revenge. Will she be able to understand what she's lost when he destroys everything she loves without breaking a single law? Michael Carrington stood in the hallway of his sleek Seattle condo, adjusting his navy blue tie in the mirror. At 42, he'd carved out a life that felt like a reward for years of grit. An acclaimed architect with a corner office at a downtown firm, a modern home perched on Capitol Hill, and a view of the Puget Sound that glittered like a postcard every evening. Tonight was supposed to be the cherry on top, the 15th anniversary of his marriage to Lisa. He'd spent weeks planning it down to the last detail. A reservation at Skyline Bistro, her favorite restaurant with its panoramic view of the water. A bouquet of peonies, her flower, waiting in the back seat of his Audi. A playlist of their old songs from their first date at a dive bar to the slow dance at their wedding, queued up for the drive. He'd even ironed his best shirt, a crisp white one she'd once said made him look timeless. It was going to be perfect, a night to remind them both why they'd said "I do." The October air nipped at his face as he parked near the bistro, the bouquet tucked under his arm. The hostess greeted him with a warm smile. "Table for Carrington, right? This way, sir." He followed her through the softly lit dining room, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses filling the space. But then he stopped cold. There, at his table, the one he'd called ahead to secure, the one with the best view of the twinkling skyline, sat Lisa. Her auburn hair caught the candlelight, and she was radiant in the emerald dress he'd given her last birthday. She was laughing, her head tilted back in that unguarded way he hadn't seen in months. Across from her was Eric, her boss at the marketing firm, his dark suit sharp against the white tablecloth. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same wine glass, fingers lingering a beat too long. Then, under the table, Michael saw it. Their hands intertwined, subtle but deliberate, like a secret they didn't care to hide. His stomach lurched. The peonies slipped an inch in his grip, the cellophane crinkling faintly. The hostess turned, puzzled. "Sir." He waved her off with a tight smile, muttering something about needing air, and backed toward the exit. He could have stormed over, flipped the table, shouted until the whole restaurant stared, demanded to know how long this had been going on. It's what most guys might have done. But Michael wasn't most guys. He built things for a living, blueprints, homes, a life, and he'd spent 15 years building this marriage. He wasn't about to let it crumble in a messy scene. Not yet. He slipped out into the night, the heavy glass door closing silently behind him, and stood on the sidewalk as the wind off the sound tugged at his coat. His breath fogged in the chill, but his mind was already sharpening, cutting through the shock. In his car, the engine purred to life, and he tossed the peonies onto the passenger seat. They looked pathetic now, a wilted symbol of a night that wouldn't happen. His phone buzzed, a text from Lisa. "Running late at work, don't wait up. Love you." The "love you" hit like a punch. He stared at the screen, the lie glowing back at him, and let out a low, bitter laugh. He didn't reply. Instead, he drove, the city lights streaking past in a blur, ferries gliding across the water, the Space Needle piercing the sky. By the time he pulled into his garage, the hurt had hardened into something else, resolve. Lisa and Eric thought they could play him for a fool, dismantle everything he'd built without a second thought. They were wrong. He wasn't going to scream or break things. He'd do what he did best: plan, design, execute. A cold, calculated response they'd never see coming. The next morning, Lisa swept into the kitchen like nothing had happened. She was all smiles, her hair still damp from the shower, the coffee maker gurgling as she poured herself a mug. "Morning, babe," she said, pecking his cheek. "Late night with the team, big pitch coming up. I'm wiped." Her voice was light, practiced, but he caught the faint whiff of cologne clinging to her sweater. Not his. He sipped his espresso, the bitterness mirroring the taste in his mouth. "Big project?" he asked, keeping his tone even, his eyes on the steam curling from his cup. "Oh, the usual chaos," she said, flipping her hair with a laugh. "Eric's riding us hard on this one." The name dropped like a stone between them, but she didn't flinch. Neither did he. He nodded, forcing a small smile, and turned to his laptop on the counter. "Hope it's worth it," he said, casual as ever. She didn't notice his fingers hovering over the keys, drafting an email he'd started in his head the night before. He'd found a private investigator online, discreet, highly rated, local. Need intel on a personal matter, he typed. Urgent. Call me. Lisa chattered on about her day, oblivious as he hit send. She thought she had him fooled, wrapped around her lies like she'd wrapped her hand around Eric's. But Michael was awake now, every nerve buzzing with purpose. He wasn't just hurt. He was dangerous in a way she'd never expect. Not with fists or fury, but with the quiet precision of a man who knew how to build something unbreakable and tear it down just as cleanly. Michael Carrington sat at his kitchen island the next evening, the Seattle skyline a muted glow beyond the windows. Lisa had breezed out that morning with a chirpy "see you tonight." Off to work, she'd said, her gym bag slung over her shoulder. He'd nodded, waved, played the part of the oblivious husband. But the moment her car disappeared down the hill, he'd dialed the number from the email that landed in his inbox at dawn. Nick Grayson, P.I., the voice on the other end had answered, gruff but professional. What's the job? Michael kept it short. My wife. I need proof. Discreetly. Nick didn't ask for sob stories, just a name, a photo, and a retainer. By noon, the deal was set. Now, 24 hours later, Michael stared at the first batch of photos Nick had sent. They sat in a folder on his laptop, unopened, taunting him. He poured a finger of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the light, and clicked. There was Lisa, stepping out of a sleek black SUV. Eric's, he recognized from the firm's parking lot, with a smile that hadn't touched her face at home in months. Another shot, the two of them at a boutique hotel downtown, her arm looped through his as they ducked inside. A third, Eric handing her a small velvet box over coffee at a tucked-away cafe, her eyes lighting up. Michael's jaw tightened. He zoomed in on the timestamp, 3 days ago, when she claimed a client dinner ran late. The bourbon burned going down, but it steadied him. This wasn't just a fling. This was a double life. Nick called minutes later. Got more if you want it, he said, voice clipped. Been at it 6 months, near as I can tell. Hotel receipts, texts. I pulled what I could from public Wi-Fi traces. She's not even hiding it that well. Michael leaned back, staring at the ceiling. 6 months. Half a year of lies while he'd been picking out anniversary gifts and planning date nights she'd canceled for work. What about money? He asked. Nick paused, then found charges on a joint account. Jewelry, dinners, a weekend at Whidbey Island. Your dime, looks like. Michael's grip on the glass tightened. Their savings, the fund he'd built for a future together, was footing the bill for her betrayal. He thanked Nick, hung up, and opened their bank app. There it was, buried in the noise of everyday expenses. $300 at a jeweler, $150 at a waterfront restaurant, $800 for a spa getaway she'd never mentioned. His name was on the account, but her hands were all over it. He could confront her now, wave the proof in her face, watch her stammer through excuses. But that was too easy, too quick. Michael didn't want tears or apologies. He wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to watch her world shift under her feet the way his had at Skyline Bistro. And he'd do it without raising his voice. The front door clicked open, and Lisa's heels tapped across the hardwood. Hey, babe, she called, dropping her bag by the couch. Traffic was a nightmare. She floated into the kitchen, all casual grace, and leaned in for a kiss. He turned his head just enough that her lips grazed his cheek instead. Rough day? He asked, closing the laptop. She shrugged, pouring herself a glass of wine. Just the usual. Eric's got us scrambling for this pitch. There was again, Eric's name tossed out like a test. Michael smiled faintly. Sounds exhausting, he said, and stood to refill his bourbon. She didn't catch the edge in his voice, didn't see the gears turning. He was already 3 steps ahead, plotting a reckoning she'd never suspect. Clean, legal, and sharp enough to cut. Michael Carrington woke before dawn, the Seattle sky still a bruised purple beyond his bedroom window. Lisa slept soundly beside him, her breathing soft and even, oblivious to the storm brewing in his head. He'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, Nick's photos and bank statements looping through his mind like a slideshow. He couldn't pause. 6 months of lies, funded by their joint account. His account, really, since his architect salary dwarfed her marketing gig. But today, he'd start dismantling her little fantasy. Not with shouting or fists. Michael wasn't that man. His weapons were quieter. Evidence, leverage, and the law. He slipped out of bed, brewed coffee, and sat at his desk in the home office. The Puget sounded dark expanse below. Step 1 was already in motion. Yesterday, he'd emailed Nick's full report, photos, receipts, timestamps, to a burner account he'd set up. Then he drafted a message to the HR department at Lisa's firm, anonymizing it through a VPN. Eric Dawson, Senior VP, violating company policy. Check the attached. The firm's handbook, which he found online, was crystal clear. No workplace romances, especially not between bosses and subordinates. Eric's career was about to take a hit, and Lisa would feel the fallout. He hit send, the confirmation ping a small victory. Next, he called his lawyer, Rachel Kim, a no-nonsense woman he'd met at a networking event years ago. "I'm filing for divorce," he told her, voice steady. "Infidelity's the grounds. I've got proof." Rachel didn't flinch. Washington's no-fault state. "Mike, but adultery can sway property division. What do you want?" He leaned back, eyes on the skyline. The house in Bellevue. She doesn't get a dime of it. The modern 3-bedroom, bought with his bonuses and sweat, was his pride. Lisa could have her trinkets from Eric. Michael was keeping what mattered. Rachel promised to draft the papers by noon. "Should be served tomorrow," she said. "Keep it civil till then." By mid-morning, Lisa was up, humming as she scrolled her phone in the kitchen. "Morning meeting got canceled," she said, sipping tea. "Might work from home." Michael nodded, sipping his coffee, his laptop open to a fake project. "Good timing," he said mildly. She didn't catch the irony. He watched her, all casual confidence, and felt a flicker of something. Anger, sure, but also anticipation. She had no idea the ground was shifting. That afternoon, his phone buzzed with a text from Nick. "HR's on it. Dawson's in a meeting with the bigwigs now." Word spreading. Michael smirked. Eric's polished reputation was cracking, and Lisa's cushy job wouldn't be far behind once the gossip hit. He didn't need to lift a finger. Corporate bureaucracy would do the dirty work. Sure enough, an hour later, Lisa's phone rang. She stepped onto the balcony to take it, her voice rising. "What do you mean, under review? That's insane." She hung up, pale, and turned to Michael. "Some idiots in HR complain about Eric. Total nonsense. Rough day at the office," he said, not looking up from his screen. She paced, muttering about jealous co-workers, oblivious to the architect of her chaos sitting 5 feet away. That evening, he cooked dinner, steak, her favorite, keeping up the charade. She barely ate, distracted, checking her phone every minute. "Eric's freaking out," she said, almost to herself. "They might suspend him." Michael speared a bite of meat. "Sounds like he's in over his head," he replied, and she missed the glint in his eye. The papers were ready. The dominoes were falling. Tomorrow, she'd see the board and realize the game was his. Michael Carrington woke to the sound of rain drumming against the windows, a steady Seattle downpour that matched the weight of the day ahead. Lisa was already up, pacing the living room in her robe, her phone pressed to her ear. "Suspended? For what?" she snapped, voice tight with panic. Michael sipped his coffee at the kitchen island, pretending to skim emails. Eric's HR meeting had gone south yesterday, and the fallout was landing right on schedule. Nick had texted late last night. "Dawson's out. Word is they found more than just your tip. Old complaints, too. Firm's cutting losses." Michael had poured a bourbon to celebrate. Alone in his office, the Bellevue house's deed glowing on his screen. Lisa stormed into the kitchen, tossing her phone onto the counter. "This is a disaster," she said, running a hand through her hair. "Eric's gone. They fired him over some stupid policy violation. Now they're sniffing around my team. It's a witch hunt." Michael raised an eyebrow, keeping his tone neutral. "That's rough. What did he do?" She waved it off, flustered. "Nothing. It's all exaggerated. Someone's out to get him." He nodded, hiding the smirk behind his mug. She didn't suspect that someone was pouring her coffee 10 feet away. The doorbell rang at 10 a.m., sharp as a blade. Michael stood, casual as ever. "I'll get it." Lisa barely glanced up, texting furiously. He opened the door to a courier in a rain-slicked jacket, holding an envelope. "Lisa Carrington?" the guy asked. Michael pointed inside. "She's there." The courier handed her the packet, tipped his cap, and left. Lisa frowned, tearing it open, and Michael watched her face drain of color. "Divorce papers?" she whispered, eyes darting to him. "Michael, what the hell is this?" He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Exactly what it looks like. I know about Eric, Lisa. 6 months. Hotels. Our money. All of it. She staggered back, clutching the papers. You're insane. This is a mistake. I'd never. He cut her off, sliding a folder across the counter. Nick's photos, receipts, the works. Don't. I've got proof. You're out of the house, too. It's mine. Lawyer's already on it. Her mouth opened, closed, then twisted into a snarl. You set this up. Eric's job, this. You're ruining everything. Michael shrugged. You ruined it. I just made sure you felt it. She lunged for her phone, dialing Eric, but it went straight to voicemail. He's not answering. He's gone dark, she muttered, panic rising. By noon, the firm called again. Michael caught snippets as she argued in the bedroom. Under review association with Dawson, reputation risk. When she emerged, her eyes were red. They're letting me go, she said, voice hollow. 10 years, and they're dropping me because of this mess. He didn't flinch. Guess actions have consequences. She glared, tears spilling. You're heartless. I made a mistake. Can't we fix this? He shook his head, calm as steel. You made a choice. I'm making mine. Pack your stuff. That night, she begged. First tears, then promises. On it with Eric, I swear. We can start over. Michael packed a bag of his own, heading for a hotel until she was gone. Too late, he said, zipping it shut. You picked him. Live with it. He drove off. The Bellevue house safe in his name. Lisa's career in ashes. She'd lost everything she'd gambled on, and he hadn't even raised his voice. The rain kept falling, washing the day clean. Michael Carrington stood on the balcony of his new apartment in Portland, the Willamette River glinting gold under the late afternoon sun. It had been 3 months since he'd driven away from the Bellevue house, leaving Lisa to pack her bags and face the wreckage she'd built. The divorce was final now. The house sold for a cool $1 million, his half of the proceeds tucked into a fresh start. He'd traded Seattle's gray bustle for Portland's quieter charm, a one-bedroom in the Pearl District with exposed brick and a view that felt like a reward. At 42, he was rebuilding, and for the first time in years, it was on his terms. The move had been swift. After Lisa's tearful exit, her belongings shoved into a rented U-Haul. He'd listed the house, hired movers, and walked away from the life they'd shared. His architect firm let him go remote, and a side gig designing eco-friendly homes had taken off, earning him a feature in a local magazine. He sipped a beer, the bottle cool against his palm, and watched a kayaker glide down the river. Freedom tasted better than revenge, though the latter had its moments. His phone buzzed, a text from a buddy back in Seattle. Heard Lisa's working retail now. Rough fall. Michael didn't reply. He didn't need to gloat. The facts spoke loud enough. Lisa's unraveling had played out like clockwork. With Eric fired and her own job gone, the firm's scandal had clung to her like damp rot. Friends, hers, mostly, had drifted away when the truth leaked. 6 months of lies, funded by Michael's hard-earned cash. She called once, a month ago, her voice thin over voicemail. I'm sorry, Mike. I messed up. Can we talk? He deleted it, blocked her number, and kept moving. She'd landed in a cramped apartment near Tacoma, selling clothes at a mall to scrape by, according to mutual acquaintances. Eric had vanished. Rumor was he'd moved east, chasing a fresh start. Michael didn't care. They'd rolled the dice together and lost. He'd heard through the grapevine she'd tried spinning the story, painting him as the villain, the cold husband who'd overreacted. It didn't stick. People saw the photos, the receipts, the velvet box Eric had given her while Michael planned their anniversary. Her pleas for sympathy fizzled when the evidence hit social circles. She made her bed. One friend had said over beers last week, "You just let her lie in it." Michael had nodded, clinking glasses. He hadn't needed to trash her. She'd done it herself. Now, his days were his own. He joined a cycling group, pedaling through Portland's leafy trails on weekends, the wind erasing years of tension. Work was a passion again. His latest project, a sustainable cabin, had just won a small award. He'd even started dating. Not seriously, just coffee here, a dinner there, testing the waters without rush. One night, over tacos with a friend, he'd cracked a grin. Divorce isn't the worst thing. Beats being a doormat. They'd laughed, and he'd meant it. The man who'd stood frozen at Skyline Bistro was gone, replaced by someone who knew his worth. Lisa's last attempt to reach him came via a letter, forwarded from Seattle. I see it now. She'd written, her handwriting shaky. I took you for granted. I'm trying to fix myself, but I miss us. He read it once, then tossed it in the recycling. She was learning, maybe retail shifts and a solo life might teach her what he never could. But Us was a ghost, and he wasn't haunted. He stepped back inside, the city humming below, and felt the weight lift. She'd lost the game. He'd won his life back. And that was enough.